What is going on, world? What's up, YouTube? It's Zero here. Today I'm bringing you guys a brand new episode of the 8 Below Show. Welcome everyone to 8 Below. Thanks for being here, guys, to the best gaming related show here on YouTube. And I'm super excited about our episode here today. We have a lot of stuff to talk about, so let's get into it. Vanquish is one of those very interesting titles, guys. I mean, one of the most intriguing action third-person shooters, guys, that I've ever played. I mean, there were some really interesting concepts that were in this game that we still haven't seen to this day. It kind of reminds me a little bit like Time Shift. Time Shift was one of those games that, guys, that there hasn't been any games nowadays that were made like Time Shift. And I think the same can be said with Vanquish. There's just so many different things about this title that was beyond its time, but at the same time, it was definitely very innovative and an interesting game to say the least. That being said, though, whatever happened to Vanquish? Is this a title that we could be getting, a sequel to at some point or another? Or is this game just going to be that one-hit wonder that it was? Let's talk about it. So, guys, this is a title that came out in 2010, was developed by Platinum Games and published by Sega. I think, something that we have to, you got to put everything into context. The two major things, of course, that can either continue a franchise or end a franchise is the reception, of course, but also the sales. So let's look at both of those things here with Vanquish. And that way we can talk about, could this be something we get into the future? Well, guys, according to Metacritic, 84 out of 100 on PS3, and then 84 out of 100 on Xbox 360. That's pretty good, if not pretty great, for a very, very beginning title in what you would hope would be a long-withstanding franchise. Now, we look at, some of these other, of course, review scores that came out. Game Informer gave it a 7.75 out of 10. You had IGN giving it an 8.5 out of 10. GameSpot, 9 out of 10. The worst one on here, guys, was Destructoid. They gave it a 5 out of 10. But outside of that, you're getting all, upper numbers here when it comes to, 7.75s out of 10 and B pluses and 9 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10. What I'm getting at is these are pretty good reviews when you consider it's a very beginning title for what, like I said, you would hope would be a long-withstanding franchise. So that's part one, is the review scores and the reception of the title. Now, let's go ahead and let's talk about the sales. So the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 versions of the game respectively debuted at number 4 with 48,318 units and number 14, 11,204 units on Japanese sales charts during their release week. By February 2011, the game had sold 820,000 copies worldwide. By March 2011, the game had sold 830,000 copies worldwide on the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 platforms. By July 1st, 2018, the PC version had approximately 143,289 players, and as of December 2018, Steam Spy estimates that the game had sold over 200,000 copies on Steam alone. So, look, when you look at that, that's pretty good. I would say that obviously it didn't quite get to 1 million copies, but if you take what Steam had as far as the Steam copies, then you're looking at over 1 million copies sold. Approximately over 143,000 players, though, guys, on PC version, and this is back in 2018, not that long ago, for a game that came out in 2010. Unbelievable. This won awards, guys. We look at the critical reception. Many reviewers praised the game's visuals, gameplay, innovation, fast-paced, and over-the-top style, though some also criticized its short length, lack of multiplayer, and mediocre plot, and as well as the corny dialogue. So let me talk about that for a moment, guys, because I think it's really important to put into context here that with a game like Vanquish, I don't believe that it needed to necessarily have multiplayer right away and co-op modes and all these other ways that you could connect with the game outside of the single player story. It's the first of its kind in this franchise. And you think of all the big franchises that when they first started, Call of Duty, and the list can go on and on of all these different titles that started as one thing and have evolved to another. And I feel like Vanquish, it was this initial concept. It was this idea of this really, innovative, fast-paced style game that could very well have evolved into, Vanquish 2 with multiplayer modes, co-op modes, and a longer story, things of that nature. I just feel that they gave up on this title too soon. That was the way that I look at it, guys, because I mean, when we're looking at, you got 143,000, players back in 2018. That's a really nice, that's a healthy number of people that are playing the game still to this day. And so what I'm getting at is, I think that there's a real need for this game, but I also think that obviously Sega and Platinum Games, I really believe, guys, that we as the fan base have to be the ones voicing our opinion to the developers and the publishers that we want this title made. We want a Vanquish 2. We want that sequel to finally come out. There were rumors and rumblings that Vanquish 2 was being made, but we have not heard anything further about it at this point in time. I believe that we as a community have to voice it into existence, guys, and really get the developers and publishers to move on it, because I think there's still a lot of people that are enjoying this title, that are still playing it to this day. And I think it could be really special. Even if they came out with like a remake or like a remaster, something of that nature to really lead us into Vanquish 2, I think would be fine as well, to really see if that fan base is still there. But nonetheless, guys, I would love to see a Vanquish 2. I think that they could really up the ante when it comes to the innovation. I would love to see them up that innovation, up the fast pace, up the length of the title, up that of, everything, the multiplayer co-op modes. I think they could really do some really special things here if they made a second game. But that's one man's opinions. I'd love to hear yours in the comment section down below. What do you think about Vanquish 2? Is this a title that should come out or a title that should stay in a limbo state, guys? Let me know what you guys think. And for more Vanquish 2 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. Many people want to see the continuation of Shadow of the Colossus, and I'm definitely someone who wants to see it as well, guys. I would love to see a continuation of this game at some point or another, but I think we got to talk about the past here in order to talk about the present as well as the future. So let's get into it. In an article coming to us, guys, from Christian Steriden of Screen Rant, Shadow of the Colossus has been renowned as a masterpiece, and even 15 years after the game's release, the prospect of a sequel is immensely exciting. Team Ico's Shadow of the Colossus is often praised as one of the most epic video games ever created. The project utilizes its immersive world, minimalist narrative, and breathtaking premise to elevate its quality far past the reach of other games. With the recent PlayStation 4 remake, Shadow of the Colossus is garnering even more attention as new gamers are allowed to experience the spectacle. However, with this resurgence in popularity comes a fleeting question: will a sequel to this masterpiece ever be realized? If a sequel to Shadow of the Colossus were to happen, it would be essential that Team Ico carry over the same tone to its successor. The actual doom and gloom that is felt throughout the Wanderer's adventures is a stark contrast to the triumph one feels when they are about to slay a Colossus. A sequel would need to demonstrate mastery over both tones, much like its predecessor. To achieve this tonal continuity, the usage of sound and music would have to remain as perfect as they do in the original. Shadow of the Colossus' tone is articulated beautifully through its impressive soundtrack that is constantly changing to fit the player's emotions. And I really I have to agree with this. I think it's very well written, guys. Definitely, Shadow of the Colossus should definitely take things from the past. I also think, though, that it needs to evolve, right? For the new age of gaming and such. So take things that worked, take things that didn't work necessarily, and how can you make all of those things better and even top what was the first Shadow of the Colossus title, I think is what you got to look at. I mean, I always look at, with any game, guys, you look at, as a developer or publisher, you look at what are you doing right, what are you doing wrong, and what can you do better moving forward. And I think Shadow of the Colossus is definitely one of those titles that they've done so much right. Not, there's certainly things they can work on, but it's definitely something like, how can we top this? And is it possible for them to do that? Because it's one of those things, like, we know the Last Guardian, that was another one that they were thinking to themselves, could we see a Last Guardian 2 at some point? And Shadow of the Colossus, all of these are considered to potentially be in the same universe. They left it kind of up to the player to determine that. But nonetheless, I feel that a sequel to this could be something incredibly special. So One interesting thought to ponder in a potential sequel to Shadow of the Colossus is where exactly the story would take place. Of course, the narrative could take place in the same location as the first game. However, the secluded nature of Wander's story makes it feel like its own arc. While it doesn't have a happy ending for Wander, bringing the player back to the same location could remove some emotional weight from the first game. Rather, going for another self-contained narrative may be a more promising idea. As for the location itself, the sky is the limit. It could be a fantasy setting, much like its predecessor, a futuristic setting, or maybe something resembling modern times. Although Team Ico would probably embrace a fantasy setting once again, the thought of a futuristic Shadow of the Colossus sounds incredibly interesting. And I got to agree. I mean, without a doubt, guys. All this discussion finally leads to the Colossi themselves. Simply put, it's hard to say exactly what Team Ico would do with these new beasts. However, Shadow of the Colossus' beta had many more unused Colossi that never made it into the finished project, which I think, guys, really, that's something they could capitalize on, because the beta had all of these different unused Colossi that never came into the finished project, and I think that's a way that they could really kind of ramp up a lot more excitement around a sequel. Some of these designs are that of a phoenix, a monkey, and even a strange winged devil type monster. If they were to continue with the fantasy setting, these designs may be given new life in a sequel, although more than likely, Team Ico will focus their attention on creating new and original Colossi to fight. Overall, Shadow of the Colossus is more than deserving of a sequel. The notion of a new location and new Colossi is enough to make any Team Ico fan foam at the mouth. While a new installment doesn't seem likely right now, the concepts within the first game are incredibly sound. So, look, guys, I think that when you look at any title and we look at could there be a possible sequel, we got to really look at the publisher, obviously the developer. We got to look at a number of factors, the reception here. We got to look at the sales, things of that nature. And really, all of the above check, the boxes are checked, right? When it comes to Shadow of the Colossus with a potential sequel. The sales were good. We got, obviously unbelievable reception. We still love the publisher as well as the developer, that being, of course, Team Ico. I think Team Ico, guys, obviously, there's a couple of things that come to mind here. They do Shadow of the Colossus. They did Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, The Last Guardian, and now it's like, okay, so what's really going to be next long-term for them? Could they go back and make Shadow of the Colossus 2, or could they go back and make The Last Guardian 2, or would they make another IP that is separate but could potentially be in that same universe? That to me is what sounds more realistic than them making a Shadow of the Colossus 2, even though I would personally love to see a Shadow of the Colossus 2 go back to that universe and into that world, because I think it could expand upon the legacy, the lore, the story, all those things of Shadow of the Colossus. I think it sounds more realistic to me that they would just create something totally new that could potentially be in that same universe. But let me know, guys, what do you all think? Do you think that we'll get a Shadow of the Colossus 2 at any point in the foreseeable future? And what do you think it could look like? Let me know in the comment section down below. And for more of the Shadow of the Colossus 2 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. One of those titles that we've been waiting years for a continuation of is Half-Life. And we got kind of a continuation of Half-Life in the form of Half-Life Alyx, which was an absolutely incredible VR experience, which I feel was really unfortunate though guys, that we didn't get Half-Life Alyx on the consoles and so on and so forth. It was a VR experience, which was great, but I feel like it limited the amount of people that were able to play it because not everybody has a VR headset. That being said, Half-Life 3, guys, is this a title that we could be seeing in the foreseeable future following Half-Life Alyx? They kind of built that up, and obviously the great success that they saw from it. Could we be seeing Half-Life 3 at some point in the foreseeable future? Let's talk about it. In an article, guys, coming to us from Hayes Madsen of Screen Rant, Half-Life Alyx creates a lot of possibilities for another game in the series. So here's what to expect from a potential Half-Life 3. So obviously, guys, there's going to be spoilers here for Half-Life Alyx, so if you have not played Half-Life Alyx, definitely play it, guys, and then come back to the video. Half-Life Alyx finally brings the franchise back after a 13-year hiatus. The VR game has some big implications for the story of Half-Life 3 and has fans now wondering what's going to happen next. There's still a lot of unknown about where Half-Life might go next, but it seems guaranteed that Valve has more in store. So here's everything that we know, guys. Let's talk about the release date. I mean, obviously, that's like the big thing that everyone wants to know. When could this game be coming out? Valve has made it clear that they're hoping to make more Half-Life. And in a recent interview, developers Robin Walker and Chris Remo said that they hope it happens a lot sooner. At the moment, however, it's not clear if that next game might be Half-Life 3, Half-Life Alyx 2, or something else entirely. At one point, Valve was working on a Half-Life 2 Episode 3 as the lead writer, Mark Laidlaw, released an official synopsis of the plot for the now defunct game. Disappointingly, the development of Episode 3 was canceled at some point as Valve moved on to other projects and their Source 2 engine took up more development time. There's clearly more plans for Half-Life, but at the moment it's unclear what shape that will take. Although after the ending of Alyx, Half-Life 3 seems the most likely option. And I think I agree with that. I feel like Half-Life 3 makes more sense than Half-Life Alyx 2. Even though I think an Alyx 2 could very well be something that's in the cards at some point or another, guys, I think that Half-Life 3 is something that has been so anticipated for so long. I've been very critical, guys, over the course of time of Valve. Even though I love them as a development, just as a team, I think they make great content and great games. I just feel like they haven't shown enough love to certain franchises or IPs that they own. One in particular is Left 4 Dead. We've wanted a Left 4 Dead 3 for so long, guys. It took a bunch of people leaving there, going to Turtle Rock Studios and creating a spiritual successor to Half-Life, or I should say Left 4 Dead, that being Back 4 Blood. And then you've got CSGO, which is obviously a massive juggernaut for Valve, and they've been very complacent with it. They haven't made a sequel to CSGO, and so then you have a team like Riot Games comes out with Valorant, and now they're going to be competing straight up with CSGO. And so what I'm getting at here is Valve just seems to be like, they've almost kind of become complacent, just, kind of supporting a couple of their games, and it doesn't even seem like they support them that great. But I do got to say that they make great games. So I really hope that over there, from an internal perspective, creative perspective, that they get Half-Life 3 made and some of these other games that we really want to see made, like Left 4 Dead 3. So Half-Life Alyx takes place in between the first Half-Life and Half-Life 2, but actually has some massive implications as the overall story. The new game takes place in City 17, and partway through the game, Alyx breaks into a massive vault hanging above the city. Although she thinks Gordon Freeman is trapped inside, it's actually the supernatural entity called G-Man. G-Man recruits Alyx as a replacement for his rebellious employee Gordon. From here, Half-Life Alyx completely retcons the ending of Half-Life 2, Episode 2. G-Man takes Alyx forward in time to the end of Episode 2, where she kills the Combine advisor and saves her father, Eli Vance. The final scene of the game is played from the perspective of Gordon, as Ellie hands the hero a crowbar and says they have work to do. With Alyx now trapped in stasis by G-Man, it's going to be up to Gordon, Eli, and Dog to save her. So, very exciting stuff, guys. What I will say is that obviously Half-Life Alyx was awesome. I thought it was a great title overall. I just feel like it really could have done so much better had it come to consoles and all of that. I think that could have potentially been the Half-Life title that we wanted, like a Half-Life 3. It would have really quenched our thirst for the long foreseeable future for a Half-Life 3. Even though we want a Half-Life 3, I think it could have definitely quenched our thirst. But it being only on VR, I feel like it only hit part of the community. So, Half-Life 3 gameplay, will it be VR? Huge question here, guys. Half-Life Alyx is a great showcase for the potential of VR, and it's one of the best experiences you can find on any VR platform. Valve started experimenting with the VR game in 2015, and the fruits of their labor are paying off. The most impressive thing is that Alyx is a full-fledged Half-Life game, clocking in around 10 hours. With another Half-Life game coming at some point, could it also be VR? So, really quick, guys, I mean, for me, I do not want to see Half-Life 3 be VR. If it is VR, I want it to be a VR experience, but also an experience you can play on consoles or play on PC. I just think that Half-Life Alyx really, as I said, could have been so much bigger had it been on all the consoles and such. And I understand that there's a development process here. Obviously, the way you make a VR game is going to be different than the way you make a console game, things of that nature. But I just would have, how much time they've had to make another Half-Life title, I would have loved it for everyone to be able to experience it. Valve has clearly harnessed the technology like few are able to, and their expertise could easily be put to use again. However, the problem with Half-Life Alyx is that there's a severely limited user base that can play it. On launch day, the number of viewers on Twitch was nearly 10 times the number of people actually playing Half-Life Alyx. It's a huge discrepancy, and although VR's popularity is on the rise, the technology is still simply too expensive for many players to invest in. Because of that, it's unlikely that a big game like Half-Life 3 would be a VR exclusive. At the same time, though, it's unlikely that Valve would create VR tech and never use it again. Half-Life 3 could easily feature a VR option or mode, but not make it required in any way. I agree. VR option is what I'm getting at. Half-Life Alyx should have been a VR option. It's plain and simple, guys. I think that the more people that can connect with the franchise, the better. And this really gets you to exclusivity, guys. You know, when we talk about like console exclusives, I want everybody to experience Gears of War, not just Xbox people. I understand it to a degree. It's like Netflix versus Amazon versus Apple TV versus Disney Plus. They all have the streaming wars. They all want to have their own exclusive content. I get it. But it really limits the user base. And I feel like gaming has not been even nearly around as long as the filmmaking industry. So I feel like we're still trying to figure things out. And I understand having exclusivity to it to an extent, but having exclusivity to VR makes it really tough, guys, when you're talking, not everybody has a VR headset yet. If all the consoles were sold, say for the Xbox Series S, X, PS5, Nintendo Switch, if all of those were sold and in the package you got a VR headset, everybody would have one at this point, and then obviously something like Half-Life Alyx makes more sense, but right now it just doesn't make sense when not everybody has a VR headset because of the cost. But even on top of that, if you don't want to play it in a VR perspective, being able to play it on console or PC, I mean, that's a great way to still connect with the franchise. But with that being said, guys, Half-Life 3, do I think that this is something that's going to come out at some point or another? Absolutely. It has to come out at some point. I mean, Valve, I know that they take their time with their projects, and it seems like they're not working on a lot of things behind the scenes, but I do think Half-Life 3 will come out at some point or another. I'll be sure to give you guys more information as it comes out. Let me know, though, guys, do you think Half-Life 3 is coming in the foreseeable future, or is it going to be something that's coming out in a number of years? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. And for more Half-Life 3 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. And with that being said, everyone, I hope you guys did enjoy this episode of the 8 Below Show. And if you guys did, guys, all I ask is that you hit that thumbs up button. Helps out the YouTube channel in a massive way. Subscribe if you're new. You'll get notified every single time that we have a new video that goes up on the YouTube channel. Stay positive, just keep grinding, and as always, I'll talk to you guys all in the next one. Peace.